There was a time he only had to step out at Buckingham Palace gates and the square became a whirlpool of screams, hands, posters, and breathless cries of "Harry, we love you." Today he drives to a community recording studio in Nottingham and gets a reception that feels like a rehearsal no one warned the actors about. Metal barriers are lined up precisely as if waves of fans are due any minute, and inside this improvised chorale stand reporters, a couple of charity staffers, and a few people who clearly just walked out of the paint store next door, rolled up wallpaper under the arm, looked up, and landed in the triumphant return montage. That's the arithmetic: more cameras than onlookers, more metal than meaning, more logistical pomp than human interest. A 45-minute delay, blamed on the tube strike, reads like a handy press office footnote but leaves one question in real life: who was anyone expecting? If you trust the chirpy about 100 tallies, you'd have to add pigeons, 2 equipment vans, and our old regulars, the camera crews who have long filmed not events, but the habit of events. In the raw footage, the head count lands in the dozens, not 100, and you feel it not with your eyes but your skin. The sound of emptiness between shutter clicks is louder than any hurrah. Into that sound he steps, tired, irritated, trying to find confidence where only choreography remains. The first movement is mechanical, nervous, misplaced. The hand shoots to the waistband, as if to adjust something invisible. There's much that needs adjusting, but optics would be a better start than underwear. The barriers are the day's main characters. They're set as if Nottingham were bracing for Taylor Swift with surprise tickets, and instead you get a trial evacuation of boredom. Perimeter fenced, walkways closed, ribbons taut, security at their posts, and no one approaches. Inside, a couple of teens wander with pro-grade boom mics, a woman in a high-vis vest, 3 camera operators who know each other by first name, and someone filming on a phone with exactly the level of energy the visit deserved. They wanted safety, got vacancy. Wanted scale, got a set that fakes scale. Wanted a return effect, got irony. The comparison writes itself, which is why it stings. December 2017, same city, same street signs, different temperature. Back then, Harry and Meghan came to Nottingham right after their engagement. The streets were packed to the brim, screams tore the air, girls cried, pensioners waved flags, the city looked like postcard Britain. 8 years later, 3 years of confessions, 2 books, 1 endless series about private pain, and Nottingham greets him with quiet. On the retake of his popularity exam, the audience had other plans. Harry still seems to play a game where mystery is the currency and the main trick is privacy under a camera. That mechanic worked at memorials, premieres, ceremonies, and it looked exportable everywhere. But the street has night vision, it sees through press screens now. If you're behind a barricade with no one pressing forward, the barricade isn't for people, it's for your past, which won't release the present. If you insist on an impromptu meet with the public and the public doesn't come, it means they no longer want to be extras. If you count on the old noise and all you hear is reading room hush, the noise ended where trust ended. It's funny and sad watching royal logistics try to recreate what isn't there. The press pool is queued, cars timed to the minute, photo marks chalked, the official shot promised and delivered. What's missing is anticipation. You can't substitute it with lanyards, buy it with fast glass, or hide it behind the word security. You certainly can't revive it by pulling other people's meanings into your orbit. This isn't a memorial, a jubilee, or a tragedy, it's a routine community visit where the audience chooses whether to come. They didn't. Meanwhile, across town. In South London, another crowd gathers, no barriers, no camera overkill. William is working, discipline always travels with him, spectacle rarely does. Learning centers, youth programs, gyms that smell of rubber and sweat rather than carpets and canapés. It's simple. People show up because they know they'll get a topic, not a storyline. On this day the contrast was almost cruel. One brother people actually awaited, another for whom they built barricades and never found anyone to fill them. As if reality itself produced a 2-part feature: what a future king looks like, and what a former media favorite has become. You can blame weather, timing, transport chaos, pick a polite excuse. But audience fatigue has one cause: saturation. Not because you appear often, but because you bring the same record every time. Every country has a limit for someone else's therapy. When the 10th it hurt and here's what I've learned lands in a year, The public nods politely and moves on. Politely, because we're talking about a man who once felt real. Moves on, because children, hospitals, coaches, volunteers, and yes, the very studio he visited are waiting. Their stories shouldn't fall again into the gap between the camera and the monologue. Empty barricade pens became the day's best metaphor. Not crowd control, but a shop window with no stock. The planner plants metal teeth by the manual without asking for whom. Security stands their watch without asking why. The press pool fills the grid without asking for whose sake. Only the street smirks and answers everyone at once. Not for me. No malice, no aggression, no classic British snark, just a collective no occasion. In Britain, that's the coldest verdict going. You weren't booed. You weren't cursed. You weren't debated. You simply weren't there. The most awkward detail is the body language of the once flawless boy from a national fairy tale. Stance, frame, gaze all obey the old training to take the hit and smile for the field. But the body tells more than the mind wants. Waiting, lateness, and the rush of emptiness behind the rails, and now he's forced to improvise where improvisation isn't needed. Polite handshakes, short thank yous, photos with kids who are just as curious about trying a microphone as seeing the man from the Society Pages textbook. He does everything right, but right isn't convincing. Magic wasn't in correctness. Magic was in being wanted. And now, he isn't. Next comes the inevitable post-production, around 100 people, warm reception, lively interest in the project. Words spent freely these days, and fooling no one. The issue isn't the count, it's that people no longer come for him. If that same crowd had come for the studio, the teens, the music, it could have been his chance to dissolve into someone else's meaning and be useful. But the visit was packaged as a return, and the audience instantly read it as another episode about the most important person in the room, him. Episodes don't land without intrigue. There isn't any left. The most honest move that day would have been to remove the barriers and leave a single traffic cone at the door. The city wouldn't be less safe, the visit no less valuable, the photo no less archival. But everyone would understand, they expect work, not fences for a crowd that never came. Charity suffocates under choreography. Community stories crumble when the visitor habitually takes the lead. No malice, just old professional muscle memory that needs to be unlearned. There's a chill in remembering he chose this track. He traded duty for a deal, responsibility for rights to the story, silence for interviews, palace corridors for a padded podcast studio. It was a conscious swap and it was interesting, so much so that we're still hearing its echo in dozens of texts, series, and the itch for one more revelation. But confession has a listener's limit. At some point, people want you to show up and not about yourself. When that moment came, all that remained were the props. And the barriers. Oddly, the kindest thing to say is that the day was useful. Useful because it finally measured reality, no romance, no gloating. It doesn't matter who went south of the river and who didn't, it matters that he came to a place that once taught him to stand with people, not instead of them, and couldn't shake the reflex to be the center. That's not villainy, it's an old reflex. Reflexes are treated only with practice, stepping out of the car and seeing not barriers but names. Not yourself, but the studio. Not the camera, but the kids for whom this day will be a true first take. Nottingham will survive someone else's awkwardness. It's used to visitors who come for half an hour and leave feeling they've done something important. The city has the grit to squeeze value from the visit without borrowed glory. It would be good for the day's protagonist to survive his silence, too, consciously, without tube excuses, without the old nasty tabloids, without the 100 people stat. In that quiet lies a chance to hear what a country sounds like when it's done with old signals. It still respects titles, but respects work more. It still remembers the boy, but isn't obliged to love the man who turned memory into a genre. And no, the moral isn't you shouldn't have left, nor you should have stayed silent, nor go back and beg forgiveness. It's simpler, and truer, if you want to be needed again, stop demanding to be needed. Arrive on time. Skip the excess fencing. Don't announce a return. Don't count clicks. Just make the studio's life a little easier after you leave. Next time you won't need to count cameras. Then barriers will be for safety, not self-esteem. Then, maybe, people will wait for you again, not because of the fairy tale you tell about yourself, but because of the work you did together. For now, Nottingham will file the day under a photo op with emptiness. The city gave an honest answer: love doesn't return on command. A name doesn't replace respect. And a triumphal tour can't be written solo. Whoever hasn't learned that will stand between the rails, searching for a crowd that moved on to better things.